Howdy y'all, welcome back to Maverick Mods. This week, working on the Firebird. Time for some paint. Not what you think. All I'm doing this week is window channels, door jambs, basically edging the car. I'll explain some of my thought process behind why I'm doing that now. But for now, grab your popcorn. Let's get started. It's time to put a little paint on the Firebird. Not what you think. Gonna do window channels and door jambs, along with rear window channel and trunk jambs. Okay, let's talk about this for a minute. I've gone back and forth a couple of times on the painting process for the Firebird. Not the paint itself, I've got that picked. I've got it figured out. The paint's sitting on the shelf right now. Not a problem there. But the process of actually painting the car. And there's two ways to do it. One, you can paint all of the body panels separately and then assemble the painted panels on the car. The other way is to paint the door jambs, paint the trunk jamb, paint the underside of the hood, inside of the fender where the hood is. Paint all of that first, assemble the car, and then paint the outer portion as kind of the last thing. And there's upsides and downsides to both ways. Let's start with painting all the panels separately. Let's pick a door, for example. So in this case, I would paint the entire shell. I would paint the trunk separately, each one of the doors separately off the vehicle, and then assemble it when the paint's dry and cured. The upside to that is that you're eliminating a tape seam in your door jamb. The downside to that is if you're not 100% super duper careful, anything can damage that painted panel as you're reassembling it. So now let's talk about painting everything after it's assembled. So basically you do the door jambs, you do the insides of the doors, bottom of the deck lid, underside of the hood, reassemble everything, and then you paint the exterior separately. The downside to that is you're gonna have a tape line inside your door jamb somewhere, because you do have to tape off the door jambs to keep overspray from getting inside there. The upside to that is there's a whole heck of a lot less chance of, well, if you damage a panel, you dent a panel, you chip an edge, anything like that, you can repair that prior to putting the final exterior color on. There's some other issues as well, but those are kind of the main ones. So what did I decide to do in the Firebird? I said, I went back and forth on this a couple of times. Finally, I decided, you know what? I don't want to take the chance of damaging a perfectly good painted panel during the assembly process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to edge everything. I'm going to do jambs, etc. Assemble the car, and then paint the exterior. So having made my decision, let's get started. I do have two things to have to consider as I'm doing window channels. There's going to be a trim piece eventually that attaches after the window itself is in place. The old roof structure had the little studs that secured the clips that secured the trim in place. The new roof structure does not have that, so I will have to recreate that. There is an attachment to a stud gun that lets you put these in basically by welding new ones in. You can also get a kit, or it's a package with just basically screw-in studs. That's what I've got. I don't have the stud attachment or the attachment for my stud gun, so I'm just going to use the screw-in. But I need to prep the window channel and sand it and get it ready for paint before I put those studs in, because once the studs are in, it's really hard to get sandpaper around the edges there, or the area there. Back here, the thing I've got to consider is I've got to do the same thing around the outside periphery, but when it comes to here, in the trunk area itself, I've got a closeout panel that comes across here that hides the trunk springs. That's got to go on prior to painting the exterior. But it also is the lower portion of the window channel itself. So what I've got to do back here is I've got to prep everything in this area for the trunk jamb, and I need to prep my hinges for my trunk, and then install them, put the springs in, put my cover on, and then paint that whole area as kind of one unit without painting the exterior of my panel itself. That might or might not have made sense, but once I get into the process, hopefully it will start to make sense. Now, since all of this was hit with epoxy primer, it also has weld-through primer below it. But this has all been epoxy primed. I'm not going to need to do any body work at all inside of this channel. And by the way, the window guys will tell you they don't like to see Bondo anywhere on the mating surface for the window itself. So body work inside of there, you know, once you get a urethane in there in the windshield, you can't see it anyway. So I'm just using my red Scotch-Brite pad. I'm going to scuff it, basically take the shiny off of it. I work my way all around the window channel. I'm doing the entire A-pillar inside and out. So let me get started on that. That's basically it. I'm just going to work my way around, get the roof channels, basically all of the A-pillar, the entire door jamb area, trunk jambs, a lot of scrubbing. We'll come back when that's done. Putting trunk hinges back together. Notice I'm wearing gloves this time because there's going to get paint here in a day or two on the trunk jamb here, but I need to have the hinges in together, the trunk springs on, so that I can put my top cover here, because in order to do my back window surround, this has to be in place. Making sure I'm getting the proper hinge on the proper side here. So essentially what it is, this slides up in like that, and this is the hinge itself, or the pivot. Actually, it's got paint on it, which is probably making it just a little bit difficult to get through there. There we go. And there is a kind of a notch on one side, which I'll show you in here. The inside of the hinge, that way you know you get the pivot in the right place. One side of it is notched like this, and the side of the hinge itself has got the same notch in it. That way you know you've got it in the right direction. Let me just get that notch lined up. Might need a little bit of help. There we go. All right, that one's in. Now what I need to do is, there's a couple of tangs on the end, and these tangs just bend a little bit. Doesn't take much, just a little bit out. And that just locks that in so that the pin doesn't slide off. So there's the first hinge. Well, it took me a minute or two to remember how to put these trunk hinges back in. I think I got it figured out. So it slides into the opening on the opposite side and kind of sits in there. And this thing, of course, it spins this way. Under tension, rotates back this way. I'm going to take my big channel locks. No, kids, don't try this at home. There we go. There right now. There it is. Of course, I missed this. Let's get that under there. All right. Good. Good. Trunk hinges are in. One of the final things I need to do before I can actually put paint on the window channels is I've got to make provision for my trim pieces. Of course, when we changed the roof structure out, it came with all new A-pillars, and they don't have the little studs to mount the clips that mount the trim pieces. So I'm going to have to add those. I've got a package of screw-in studs. I've got to measure for those. So let's see if I can do this one-handed. Basically what I need to do, here's the clip. And this clip is going to fit basically, I don't know if I can keep from dropping it. This clip is going to fit basically right there. It's going to be held in by a stud, which looks like this, that I'm going to drill a hole, measure, mark, and drill a hole, and the stud will go in, and then the clip will just pop down onto the stud. So what I need to do is I need to figure out the proper depth to mark the hole for the screw, and that's going to involve just measuring my clip, which is going to fit like so. It's a lot easier if you have two free hands. Okay, so my clip is going to fit basically in like that. And so I need to measure from the edge here to the hole, mark that down. I'm going to do a test first to make sure it's right. So I need to measure from the edge to where the stud itself is going to go, whatever that height is. Then bring it over here, mark that. I'm going to do a test first, obviously, and figure out just how deep I need to go, make sure it's right, and then I'll do the rest of them. I have checked all of my trim pieces to make sure that they're all the same thickness, make sure they're all the same, and the clips are all the same. So I'm good there. So let me measure, mark, and put a stud in. Let's see how it works. All right, so I got my hole measured and drilled, got my stud in. Now I will actually glue these in with JB Weld when they're permanent. Got my stud in. Let's put my clip on. So you clip, this is the part right here that slides over the stud. So you clip just slides in. Might take a little bit of force, a little bit of effort to get it down, and it'll latch or lock right on the edge of the lip of that stud itself. So that's in. Let's check our trim piece. Yep, that's the right one. Okay, so now this trim piece is going to have a little bit of tweaking before it becomes permanent, because it's a little bit warped, but that's okay. Your trim piece should just snap right over there. That's pretty much about where it should be. And what I want to do is I want to check and make sure that I'm, you know, height-wise, the trim is not proud of the A-pillar, or it's sunk in. So that feels pretty good. So my measurement is going to work for the edge of the roof line all the way around. Well, it's paint day. I've got the door jambs completely sanded, window channels sanded. Let's see, trunk area, jambs, whatever you want to call it, sanded, hinges, all of that done. And the deck lid underneath side also. So that's what's going to get paint today. Everything is taped off. What I'm using here is, I don't remember if this is 3M or an equivalent, but it's plastic sheeting. It's electrostatic. In fact, there's a specific side that you're supposed to have facing out. It even says paint this side somewhere. Let's see if I can find it somewhere. But of course, it came from my guys at Palmetto Paint Specialties. I don't remember if this is 3M or an equivalent, because there's nothing on the box that I can see. Well, whatever it is, it's really good stuff. I've gotten away from paper almost completely. This stuff is great. It actually is kind of clingy, so when you lay it down, it kind of just sticks to, well, not sticks, it clings to the surface that you're trying to cover. You notice basically the entire car is quote-unquote papered off, or taped off, whatever you want to call it. And that's specifically to control overspray. Now, I'm using my detail gun today, so it should be a fairly minimal overspray, but and I don't particularly like painting where the car is, but stand by. You notice that the Firebird is on the lift, and I've got it taped off, so at this point it can't move. I don't normally paint there. It's not a really good place to do it, and the reason behind that is my shop is I'm a part of a larger building, and we're going through a little realignment, and when the realignment's done, I'm going to wind up with an extra bay and a lot more room. So I'm pretty happy about that, but that's happening now, which is happening at the same time I need to do some paint work on the Firebird. So I'm kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, because I don't want progress just to stop on the Firebird. So doing the jams, I can get away with kind of keeping the dust under control and keeping the trash in the paint. Pretty sure I'll be able to do okay on that. And if I do get a little bit, it's fairly easy to fix. So, and I'm using my detail gun, so that should keep the overspray to a minimum. Anyway, that's why I'm painting on the lift today. Fellas, it's the next morning, and by the time I got all of this done, you guys have watched me paint before, so I just went ahead and did all the jams. That was a little bit of spot primer on a few areas that I sanded through. 1 coat of regular black base, 2 coats of the, still haven't come up with a name for the color, for the final color for the car. And by the time I was, and 2 coats of clear. So by the time I was done with all of that, I was absolutely wiped out. So I didn't even untape it. So let me get it untaped, and let's take a look at it after it's untaped. With the tape off, we can see the kind of the demarcation there a little bit better. Basically, it's just the window channels are done, door jams are done. Looks really good. I did get one run right there I'll have to fix, but other than that, it came out really well. Trunk jams are basically, we're ready for weather stripping and deck lid to be installed. And there's the other side. And over here in the makeshift paint booth, bottom of the deck lid is done as well. So I'm going to give these a couple of days to let the clear coat harden up before I start throwing them around. Other than that, I can start putting at least one of the body panels back on. It's a few days later. Gave my paint plenty of time to harden up. Time to put some, actually it's time to put the deck lid back on, but before I do that, I've got to put some Weatherstrip in the channel here. Pretty straightforward. There's not a whole lot to it. This is new Weatherstrip. It just kind of molds and fits and kind of wedges itself down in the channel here. Only thing you really got to pay attention to is, even though it's supposed to wedge in the channel, it's not really 100% permanent, and you do want this to kind of be permanent. So I am going to take some Weatherstrip adhesive, just nothing special about it, Weatherstrip adhesive, and just kind of tack it in a few spots. But the other thing to keep in mind is you're going to have a seam no matter where you go around here. You don't want the seam up here, because if water comes down here, it can get through the seam and water can get back in. So just put the seam somewhere along here. There's not really any way to hide it, so it's going to be there. But just make sure your seam is down here. The last thing with the Weatherstrip is, when you get around the corners around here, it's going to want to tend to kind of pull back. So even though I'm just going to tack it in a few spots along the long straight edges, when I get to the corner, I'm going to kind of take some time and glue that in. So let's get the Weatherstrip in. So basically that's it. I'm going to work my way around, maybe show you one corner where I kind of go a little bit heavier on the glue, but that's essentially what you need to do to work your Weatherstrip in. I've got most of it all the way around. One of the kind of secrets of doing corners, don't try and stretch the Weatherstrip around the corner, because it's just going to pull back in on itself. What I do is, when I glue it in, I kind of try and bunch it a little bit, and I do it in short sections like this. You notice I switched over to a chip brush. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of come in here, and I'm doing about 1.5 inches, maybe something like that. You don't want the adhesive to be very thick, because that means it just takes longer for it to dry. And you just kind of work it under the channel. Just make sure I get it all the way in. Go a little bit farther, and then you just kind of bunch it back in so that the rubber doesn't want to contract a little bit and just pull out of that channel in the corner. Kind of let it sit there for just a minute or so for the glue to start tacking, and just keep working your way around. Alright, let's put a little pressure on that. Just for a second to kind of let the glue set a little bit. And these window channels, the stamped ones, the molded ones, whatever you want to call it, they're not perfect. They're not going to be exact all the way around. Just, you know, try and get it in as best you can so it'll hold its shape. And the last thing is, you notice I'm cutting a little bit long. It's always good to trim it, you know, 1 inch or 2, 3, 6, 2 feet, whatever you need, versus it being a little bit too short. And all we got to do now, before I go too much farther, is go ahead and trim this. I'm using a pair of scissors, but you can use whatever you want. I'm going to put just a little bit of, I'm going to pull it back just a little bit. So that it kind of has got a little bit of tension on it, right at that joint. And this should be the last section. Okay, and I'm going to put some Weatherstrip adhesive on the edge here so that where they join, probably need to put a little bit more on that. I think it was a little bit dry. Yep, a little bit dry. And just join the edges. Just like so. Weatherstrip installation complete. Time to install the deck lid. I'm by myself in the shop again today, but I think I can handle this. All I've got to do is worry about the edges. Got some microfiber towels in the corners just in case it kind of drops down a little bit. I've got my bolts pre-set and a drill bit because I pre-drilled the hinges so that when I get everything lined up, I can just stick the drill bit in and I'm close to where I need to be. Let me go grab the deck lid. All right, so I'll go ahead and set this down gently, carefully. Kind of get it about where it needs to be. Let me grab my drill bit. Use my head. Alright, so I'm lined up in my holes. Get some bolts in. Now let me switch over to the other side. Same thing. Alright, I'm going to go just a hint more than hand tight. About right there. Just a hint past finger tight. Now, let's drop it down and see how it lines up. Alright, actually I can take the tape and paper off the outside here. Deck lid is reinstalled. It's kind of a major milestone. First body panel coming back on the car permanently. Now I need to get the latch, hinge, and the lock set up so that I can actually close it, do the final adjustment. Alright, so let's start off by dropping down and just taking a look at how my alignment is, because this needs to fit in between. Looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of tighten this down right there. A little bit more than finger tight, just to hold it. I've got my keys so I can unlock the trunk. And let's see how, did I get these tight? Not yet. And two, okay. Now let's see how that does. I'm a little high. I think I can come down just a little bit. So if I need to come down, now I'm going to look over here. Now I actually kind of hit the paint here on my lock cylinder, so I need to go. I need to move the lock and the latch to the, I guess, my left just a little bit. And I'm going to take and I'm going to move this one up just a little bit. Tight, tight. Let's see how that did. Keys. There. Feels good, feels good. Let's make sure the latch is good. We're good. good. All right, done. Well, that's going to do it for this week, guys. Got the door jambs edged out, window channels, everything's done. Got the deck lid permanently installed. Again, kind of a milestone, you know, I mean, the body's starting to go back together. Next up, I've got some exhaust work to do. And after that, probably wiring and interior. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. It's not my favorite, but it's got to be done. So stay tuned. A lot more work left to do on the Firebird. Certainly appreciate everybody tuning in every week. Big thanks to all you guys, especially these last few weeks. Can't say enough. Thanks a bunch, guys. Please like, share, subscribe, notify, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it really does help me out. See you guys next week. Everybody, have a great day.